you have racism everywhere, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. You have things that we, coming from me, that sometimes us white people don't acknowledge, or we don't even understand that it's there because we don't have to personally deal with it.
Before we get started, I want to say thank you to all of those who have donated to this channel. If you don't know, you can go to faithandfailures.com, sign up for our newsletter. You can get weekly updates on our weekly blogs, new episodes that come out, and discounts and new items that show up in our merch store. Also, if you're a part of Facebook, we also have a Facebook group. It is called Faith and Failures, just like the podcast, where over 200 people are talking about real topics, their daily struggles, questions about God, real things that we struggle with that we don't always get the chance to talk about in church. So if you get a chance, go check it out. All right, let's get started.
So it is no secret that right now, if you go just beyond the junk, if you go just beyond the riots, you can see a group of people who are being dedicated to change, and a group of people who are being passionate about, whether they are in the middle or on the outside, they're being passionate about people and compassionate and trying to be a voice in the dark. Now, my question to you and my question to the church today is, who are you? So if you got a neighbor next to you, or if you were looking at your phone right now and sometimes you can see the reflection of your face when you're looking at it, look at your neighbor with all the sass you can and say, who are you? Who are you? Now, I don't know if you had I don't know if you'd say charismatic, or my mom had spunk. She still does. And I don't believe that's ever going to fade. But she would, if I talked wrong to her, or my brother talked wrong to her, or if I talked wrong to my wife, she looks at me and says, who are you? Who do you think you are? And that's my question to you in the church, is who are you? And who do you think you are? And I don't mean who do you think you are in the negative sense, like I just gave the example. But I want you to really dig deep inside, and who are you? Are you who you think you are? Are you stepping up in the way that you should as a Christian, as it is mandated in the Bible, just to blow some theologians, to blow some theology out of the water? Jesus ain't white. He's not. But see, the thing is that no matter what color he was, he, from the beginning of time, being the Word and being birthed into the world as the Word, he came for every race, every sexual orientation, male or female. There's no greater than the other. It was an all-inclusive, from Jew to Gentile, that Jesus came for. So, now with that being stated, and what you've already should have known, what are you doing to help be that voice in the dark? We have right now, if you listen to rap, so probably if you're watching this, you probably don't, but maybe some of you do, or maybe your kids or your grandkids do. There's a Christian artist, his name is Lecrae, and I saw him, what was the guy's name? Louis Giglio, I think is his name. And he was on a talk show with Louis Giglio. I don't know if it was the Giglio, whatever, how do you pronounce it? I'm Texan. We can't pronounce all those fancy words. I don't know what the whole context of the whole thing was, but I watched a little snippet of it. And Lecrae was the only black man there. And there's a couple older, or at least one older white guy. I don't remember what the age of the other one. But Giglio ended up, so, I mean, we've all heard the term white privilege. I've heard it. When I was growing up, I grew up in Palestine, a smaller town. I mean, you have racism everywhere, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. You have things that we, coming from me, that sometimes us white people don't acknowledge, or we don't even understand that it's there because we don't have to personally deal with it, if that makes sense. So my question is to you is, are you as the church being compassionate towards a race that is crying out for freedom in here? They're not slaves anymore, but they feel like they're still looked at as lesser. I will never understand this. My children or my wife will never understand this. And if you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, and you have a Twitter account, just go look at a couple of posts of someone saying one thing, and you'll see like a constant feed of just hate and anger and people lashing out in the most ignorant way possible towards each other. And these are supposed to be people who know the way. Who are you? Do you sit idly by and watch brothers and sisters in Christ suffer when our generation wasn't even a part of it? And they still are feeling the pain and the anguish. And then me, as a young white man, I feel guilt when I've never looked at a black person in that way, ever. Like growing up in my household, like we were a multicultural family. We had Hispanics, we had blacks, we had Egyptian, we had Asian. Like that, those are my closest friends. Those are the ones that we had one white kid. It wasn't me. There was another white kid. But the rest of us they would all come in and call my mom Mama. Like there's this one guy, Tyrone. Him and a guy named Norris. They were when they were in high school, the first part of high school and junior high. They were out at the children's home over in I don't remember where it's at, but it's over on the other side of Palestine. And my grandma was living with us, and I was in the 9th or 10th grade, and Tyrone was in I believe he was in the 12th. And he came over, and my grandma is now passed on, but her generation was that generation a little bit before. Like it was kind of an overlap. Like that generation was just the edge of going out. My grandma, she was sitting there in the chair, and he'd come over many times. I mean, he was my best friend. We're always playing basketball together outside of the house, and he came over, and he went up and he gave my grandma sugar on the cheek, and not being racist and not even thinking that it was racist, she was like, "Woo, that was the best black sugar I've ever had." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so hilarious." But growing up, I never saw. Yeah, we're different. We have cultural backgrounds. Like things are different, but I never saw anybody of a different race as less. But I completely understand what they're talking about when they're saying that they feel like they get pulled over and immediately, like, negative. Like, people on Twitter, it irritates me so much because I see white people calling certain people thugs and all this other stuff, and then the rap music that's coming out, the secular rap music that is just fueling the fire and trying to make everybody want to be thugs and all this other stuff and gangs and all this stuff, and it's tearing down a culture. And we need to be, as Christians, no matter what color we are, we need to be, as Christians, the ones who build others up. We need to be that voice. Christ came specifically to be that voice in the wilderness, to be that voice to build other people up, and to say that whoever comes unto me will be saved. Whosoever. And so who are you? Because if you're like me, I was completely ignorant and really never actually thought of it. But when you actually give thought to what's going on around us and what's happening right now, you start to see a light. And like, man, I never, ever realized that this was such an issue until I see these protesters. I never saw like someone of different color being less than me. But now, since I'm seeing the protests and the crying out of an entire people, how can we be insensitive But yet we read verses and scriptures in the Bible of the Israelites, and we have mercy and compassion towards them. But when it's other people today, we just cut it off, and we go numb to what is happening in people's lives, and people are really struggling, and literally people are dying, and it shouldn't be. Who are you? And I ask you this point blank to your face. I'm literally as close as I've been in a while, if you're watching me right now, because I've been on the stage and then y'all be dismissed in the church. But I want you to ask yourself, ask your family, if you're the man of the home or the woman of the home and you're the leader of the household, who are you? Who are you reaching out to? And I'm telling you, I'm about to tell you the story, and I'm not saying it to pump me up or to bring glory to me, because I felt God spoke it into me, and I want to share it with you, because I feel that sometimes we can hold back. Me being a white person can hold back because we don't want somebody to think any thoughts about how we do things. So I'm going to tell you this story. So I was in, I don't remember what town it was. It was like 2 hours away from here, and I was working. And I had this job, and I had two jobs, but I had one that was at this time and one that was a little bit later, and I got done with the first quicker before the next one was up. So what I did was I went to IHOP, and it was still, I think, restaurants at 50%, so they were spacing this out. Well, they did a terrible job, because it was like me in this like single booth where one person and one person could sit and face each other, and then there was the other booths. Well, there was two black ladies sitting right there with a little black baby. It was adorable. And I was sitting there, and I was eating my food, and I was actually facing a wall that was like a little mural thing that they had painted on the wall, and I had nobody but me and God, because I was by myself, and I felt the Spirit of the Lord bring a compassion on me, and I didn't even know these people. I have never. I think we're guilty as church people, as Christians, and for me personally as white people, to sit by and just let things happen the way that they happen, when we should be the ones standing up for those less, that can't defend themselves. We should be the ones standing up for the people. That's exactly the example that Jesus gave us. Even that lady that came and knew what her sins were, and he still stopped her from being stoned to death. That was the law. Think about that. Rip away everything else and just go to this one story. And Jesus said she did not deserve death, that she was meant for more, that she still had a story to be written. And I believe the same is happening right now. The voices are being louder than ever, being full of compassion. When you look past the writing, look past all just this stupidity, and you see that there are people really hurting, and they're crying out. It's literally a nation of people crying out for justice, for equality. One of the basic things that America prides itself in is equality. And it's terrible at it. We let things fall to the wayside, and we don't maintain what we say we believe, and we let it fall to the wayside. And so I was sitting next to these two ladies and the baby, and God spoke to me and said, "Pay for their meal." I had no problem with paying for their meal. What I had a problem was, how do I go about it? I don't have a problem with doing something. Okay, Lord, if you speak to me, I'll do it. But then I started backtracking. Pastor, I started crawdadding because I didn't know how to go about it. Because the one thing that got in my head, and I believe it was the enemy, is that what are they going to think about this white guy trying to pay for their food? Think about it. The one blessing and the one thing that God told me to do, I started arguing and used my race as a reason not to do it. And so I sit there with this dialogue in my head. I'm like, well, I know they just got their check. And I'm like, man, are they going to get up? Like, So I'm sitting there, and if you've done that stare before, where you just stare at the wall, but you're trying to pay attention to what's happening next to you. And so I'm just like, okay, they're not getting up. Lord, what can I do? How can I say this? And so they got their check, and I almost finished my food, and I'm like, Lord, I cannot finish this meal and not pay for theirs. I know that you told me to do this. Why can I not do this? The simple thing that you're saying, I know I have the money. You provided that for me. You're getting it to me. God, give me the strength, the courage to just move past myself and allow you to work through me. And so as I did this, I was like, you know what? Pastor knows this because behind closed doors, him and I talk very blunt to each other. My wife knows this because the first time that I met Pastor, she told me I was a little too blunt and probably hurt his feelings. And y'all usually don't see this part of me. But some of you who know me a little better and you personal level, sometimes I don't speak my mind. I'm good at reserving. But when I do speak my mind, I'm very blunt with it. And so I said, why can I do that in ministry and I can't do that sitting here at the table? I'm like beating myself up and arguing with myself. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. And all I did was I turned and I said, can I ask you a weird question? And they were like, yeah. And I said, will you allow me to pay for your food? And they both, shocked looks on their face. And they said, are you serious? No, it's fine. Like they were trying to tell me no. And I said, please, will you allow me to do that? That's all I did. I came with a posture of humility and of compassion. And I said, will you allow me? And I said, here, let me have it. And I stuck my hand out. I was kind of like, okay, Lord. And she gave me the check. And like, I did the whole staring at the wall thing again. When I get nervous and when I'm in an awkward conversation or something like that, y'all may not realize that I do this or that I even get nervous. My wife does. She's like, when do you get nervous? I never see it. I started sweating. I get really hot and uncomfortable. And I was sitting there and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so hot right now. But I just like did the whole staring at the wall thing. And I could hear them because they were, across like a regular aisle. They were right there. And they were talking to each other like, I don't even know what to say right now. And they were like, they said, thank you so much. And God bless you. And I said, y'all too. I said, thank you for letting me do that. I just finished up my food. And they said it one more time before they left. They got up and they left. And they were speechless. But that one small thing that I allowed God, even though I tried to fight it because I was so worried about what people will think, then in that moment, I had to answer the question internally, who am I going to be externally? I had to answer the question, am I going to be the man of God? Am I going to be the channel that God can use me to just reach out and bless someone else? Or am I going to mentally and eternally put up a dam and say, God, you can only do it to here, and beyond that, I'm uncomfortable. And so I think as a healthy church, as healthy Christians, and me personally, as a healthy white American, I need to check myself in my heart and my spirit and in my mind and ask, who am I? Am I going to be someone who stands up for someone who can't defend it for themselves? Because the protest right now is great. But that protest needs to go into the homes of every single person. It doesn't need to stay in the streets. It needs to come back into the homes. That's where the change starts, to where we breed the next generation. We breed out this hate. We breed out this racial injustice junk. That nobody is less than anybody else. And that Jesus came for everyone. Right now, we have such a great opportunity. as a church of believers, as a group of believers, to come alongside the people who are crying out for just a simple thing like social justice, racial equality, things that should have already been squashed 50 years ago, and today is still having to be protested because it still is not where it should be. Are you being that change? Are you being that voice? Who are you? Is who you are matching up with what the Word of God says we should be? Because the children of Israel went through this as well. And they had to go through a huge process of hundreds of years. And I believe God can change this today. I believe God can bring equality to America and around the world now. But it has to start with the people who are not in the middle of it, but on the outside, coming together in the middle and joining hands with the people who are suffering and crying out. Who are we? Who are we as the church? What are we doing to go forward with these people? To hold hand in hand and say, I will march with you. I will be with you. I love you. You are equal to me. I have to put myself aside. We have a chance more than ever before to show a new level of compassion. In Ephesians 1, 7 through 10, I'm going to read it. And it's the Message version. I really like the way that it reads, and I'm going to read it to you just real quick, and then we'll wrap it up. Because of the sacrifice of the Messiah, his blood poured out on the altar of the cross. We're a free people, free of penalties and punishment, chalked up by all of our misdeeds. And not just barely free either, abundantly free. He thought of everything, provided for everything we could possibly need, letting us in on the plans he took such delight in making. He set it all out before us in Christ as long-range plan in which everything would be brought together and summed up in him. Everything in deepest heaven and everything on planet Earth. Everything of yesterday. If you've ever lived in sin, you understand this. Everything of yesterday, when you come in Christ, is filtered through his blood and you come out of the other side. Not condemned, not damned to eternal hell. We should be viewing the people suffering through the eyes of the way God sees us. We should be reflections. Whether you want to or not, we're all reflections of our parents. I don't know how it happens, but okay, like when I get hurt, I laugh. Like that's I don't know why I do it. That's just how it happens. My kid, when he was walking, so he was 1, maybe 2. I would pinch his little hind cheeks and squeeze it real tight, and he would be hurting so much, but he would laugh. When he would fall down, he would get hurt and laugh. He was a reflection of me, and he didn't learn that from me. It was just in his DNA, which is a weird thing to carry down, but but when he would get injured, he would laugh. We are reflections of our parents. We should also be reflections of our God to show compassion for all. Color is a beautiful thing. I'm glad, Pastor, I'm being honest. We're not face to face, so I can be honest. When you said you didn't, and I'm glad you corrected it and said that you do see color, because color is beautiful. If you walk outside in the springtime and you look, and things that were once dead are now blooming, and it's been raining and it's flourishing, it's colorful. God enjoys color. That's why he made it that way. God enjoys variety. And when you talk or think in a negative or bad way about the creation, you are in direct line of biting the hand of the Creator. You cannot talk out of two sides of your mouth, because one will always manifest itself and take over the other. Now, what we have to ask ourselves in this window of opportunity is, who are we? Who are we as a church? Who are you as a Christian? Who are you as a man and woman of God? Are you hearing the voices that are speaking out? Are you hearing the suffering of the people crying out, or have you turned yourself off so you can tune into what you enjoy better? Suffering has to be recognized before salvation comes. We cannot We cannot hide ourselves inside of our church doors any longer. We have to recognize the suffering. How are we being the change? And better yet, how are we being the church? Who are we? Who are you? Right in your face. Who are you? I've asked myself this many times. And if you're growing up as a kid and the kids in the young people in my class, man, a lot of them are just now going through puberty. My son's going to hit 12 this year, and I'm gonna have to take about a 5-year vacation and come back when he's done. He's already knowing everything, and he doesn't. And it's hard because he's trying to figure out who he is. And I think us, as Christians, as adults, sometimes are still trying to figure out who we are. If you go to a lot of what the psalmist wrote, he was trying to figure out things, and he said it out loud. We're seeing people saying things out loud now, proclaiming, protesting, trying to figure out who they are, trying to figure out where they belong, and they're saying, I belong here. We need to have them with open arms and say, yes, you belong here. You belong with us. We belong together. Who are we? Who are you? Self-examination is key to reaching the people who are suffering and are lost. The people who are out protesting, the black people in our community. If you go to a church and if you have only white people, shame on you. I'll say that again in case you missed it. If you have a church or you are in a church and you have only white people, shame on you. You are not being the hands and feet of Christ. Sorry for being a little direct. We need to be reaching and being a multicultural church. That is who Christ died for. He didn't die for the white people. He didn't die for the black people. He didn't die for the Hispanic people, the Asian people. He died for whosoever. That is powerful. When you start to grasp the true heart of Jesus and of God, it is a whosoever come unto me. That a color should not negate somebody from being able to come to Christ or come to the doors of your church. So who are you? Don't be like I was when I was sitting across from that family and try to talk yourself out of what God is telling you. God has not called us to be silent. God has not called us to sit on the sidelines and watch to see how America turns out, or how this world turns out, or how this community turns out. I serve a one true God. He's the master and the creator over it all. I feel like sometimes in our churches, in our communities, in our social gatherings, we sometimes, there's very good aspects to everything, but we sometimes have a tribal mentality and we don't want anyone to come in our little circle. And so we shut any opportunity that God is trying to do to reach people. And so I want to challenge you this week and the weeks to come and the months to come, because we have a culture and a people that is crying out right now. And I've been watching the protests and stuff, and thank God there are not just black people out there, that there are actually other people and white people out there that say, yes, enough is enough. Yes, racial injustice is ridiculous. We live in America. It shouldn't even be a thing. It should be equal across the board. No exceptions. Sorry, I got a little upset on that. And I know this is also the heart of the pastor, and that's why I felt released to speak on this. Because we need to be asking, I'm saying it 20 times during this video because I want you to start getting it in your head and questioning yourself. Self-evaluation is key to reaching the lost and reaching these communities. And to going outside of the walls of our church. We have to be doing something bigger than our church walls, or we will stay only inside of them. I really want you to start questioning in your personal heart, in your mind, and in your family, and then in your church and in your community. Are you being closed off to what God's trying to use you for because someone doesn't look like you? They're hurting. We've all hurt before. We should have compassion towards that. They don't know what else. They're doing it right. They're making it known. And I'm glad for them. I'm proud of them. But these are people who, they're suffering for the mistakes of my forefathers. Have compassion towards people. Be willing to step outside of your family, out of your tribe. Be willing to reach out and say, you are loved, you are heard. I see you, I hear you. This doesn't just apply for the protesting. This applies for regular, standard, everyday witnessing, our heart that we should have to reach out to those outside of our church. That's the heart and the compassion of Jesus. See people through Jesus' eyes. See people through his filter. See people for who they are, not what they look like. And that's what I want to leave you with today, to have a self-evaluation. Who are you? Who am I? And ask and pray and seek God and really dig deep in here and say, God, am I being who I'm supposed to be? Because it's easy to just fall back and just let the world just do what they're going to do. Oh, it's politics. They're going to do what they're going to do. No, absolutely not. I serve a God who's bigger than that junk. End of story. So be a light, be a voice, and be a compassionate heart. Be the hands and the feet of Jesus. Just ask yourself who you are. Ask God to show you who you are. Ask the Holy Spirit to show you who you are. But I'm very passionate about this. This is my heart. Ask yourself who you are. And we have to step outside of our comfort zone. Inside of our comfort zone, nothing is achieved. We spin our wheels in our little perfect area. When we start to get outside of that, God can really use and open up opportunities and doors that we never thought possible. Just leave you with one last thought. Who are you?